It's good soup.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. I am Beau Oliver, joined here today with Aaron the Nerd Soup Monkey, and we are back to review House of the Dragon, Episode 8, The Lord of the Tides. Excuse my voice again, I'm still recovering from last week being sick. The flu has hands. Felt like Viserys all week, just walking around with a cane, coughing, wheezing, but still here, acting kingly. This is my, coming in the throne room scene.
Oh, okay.
Help me up.
This was a little bit more, epic.
Yeah, I don't have a composer with my own theme.
Yeah, you're just sitting here drinking coffee.
Tea. Herbal tea.
Okay. You were drinking tea, too, so...
Yeah, he was.
You just like him.
I need some milk of the poppy, honestly, after the week I had.
I mean, I'll try anything once. That stuff looks like it. It does the trick.
Good episode. The episode begins with Princess Rhaenys, and she's holding court as the Lord of Driftmark. Lord Corlys was away at battle, and he's come down with blood fever. Sounds really nasty. Gotta put him in an ice bath. So the succession is in question. That's the driving force of this episode. Obviously, you have Vaemond Velaryon, who took a couple of digs at Rhaenyra's children, talking about pure-blood Valyrians. So he wants to claim the throne, which always makes for interesting politics in the world of Westeros. So I thought this episode was, once again, you could cut the tension with a knife. Literally the calm before the storm. You hear the rumbling thunder in the sky, cloudy in King's Landing, no sun in sight. So I thought the overall atmosphere of the episode was great, and the performances, you got some of the best performances from these characters in this episode. Well, specifically, I think Paddy Considine, who has given Viserys so much life, so much humanity throughout these first 8 episodes, and it's why he's my favorite character, but everything surrounding the question of the succession of Driftmark was very interesting, very engaging, and I thought it was another good episode.
Definitely, yeah, and Paddy Considine, obviously, I can't say enough about him and his performance so far, and as good as he took it to another level this episode. But I think that initial setup before, everything else culminates was actually done really well, especially everything with Driftmark and seeing the interaction between Vaemond and Rhaenys, I thought was really well done because, well, we learned later in the episode that Rhaenys, like we said last episode, would probably think that they had something to do with killing her son. I like how you have, one of her grandchildren as her ward, so there is still some connections there, but definitely they're not on the best of terms. But even after all that, she still, even when Vaemond's making his plea to Rhaenys, she brings up words like treason and still kind of has Rhaenyra's back in that sense. So that initial setup on Driftmark and even on Dragonstone, just, seeing Jace trying to learn Valyrian and things like that kind of help bridging that, what is it, a 6-year gap this time?
Yes.
I think they did a good job yet again of reestablishing these characters, kind of making that time pass seem a little bit more manageable when it comes from a viewer's perspective. You have Daemon getting the dragon egg, which looks a little dangerous. I mean, it's definitely worth it because you got a dragon, but I don't know, maybe hire some people, get a nice little mining system going instead of, what do they call it, free basing or free climbing?
Sure.
Down into that pit to get the dragon egg. But I think that initial setup, especially with Jace, I thought was good because obviously as the episode progresses with Jace and Luke having them be such a integral part of the rest of that story. It was good to see the new actors in their roles, and I think they did very well as those characters. And then even in King's Landing, getting reintroduced to Aegon and what's going on there. So I think they did a good job of hitting basically the 3 main settings, 3 main families, and kind of helping us catch up to where we left off on. And that scene with Alicent talking to, I guess it was Aegon's cupbearer after she was assaulted by him, that was... Olivia Cooke was fantastic in that scene, just her facial expressions and the way she was delivering some of those lines. She's in a place where I think she wants to do good, but also protect her family. And it seems as if this is not maybe the first time, especially having Aegon and Aemond both kind of how we see what those characters are like nowadays. It seems like she's struggling to kind of keep a hold on them. So, Aegon, last episode, we talked about him being like, oh, I don't really care. I'm just going to drink and kind of do what I want. But here, you see how some of that power can really, the position he's in is kind of corrupted him at this point, and to the point where he barely even cares or blinks an eye at what he did.
Yeah, that whole Aegon situation situation was particularly unsettling, but that's what happens when you're in these positions of power. You have people who are going to clean up your mess, and it shows that Alicent's a bit of a hypocrite, which often happens in this world. She was complaining about Rhaenyra sleeping with her uncle and Criston Cole. Then she weds her 2 Targaryen children, so obviously she doesn't have a problem with incest. And now, like I said, giving the maid the tea and trying to sweep it under the rug, giving her the money, telling her not to, tell anybody about this, and then chastising Aegon for what he did. But like you said, he's just so indifferent to all of it. He tells her, I've done everything you've asked of me. How come I can't be a sex criminal?
Yeah.
It's just when you're in those positions, you feel like you can do anything you want. You could take anything you want. And it's why I think Daenerys in season 5 set out to break the wheel. And, that's why we got the ending we got at the end of Game of Thrones, because this feudalistic society, it just breeds monsters in so many different ways. And, a character like Aemon, I don't think we've seen the best of him or the worst of him just yet, but you see where he's headed, that he's sort of cosplaying as his uncle, and they share a couple of nice moments in this episode, and that he's a bully, he's an instigator. When everything is going well, he's the one that kind of flips it on its head. He flips over the table and starts that little ruckus. These kids, they're rich, spoiled, asshole kids.
Yeah, 100%. That's what it comes down to. The difference between Aegon and Aemon right now, from what I can see, is you're right. Like, Aegon is spoiled, rich, doesn't really want any responsibility, thinks he can do what he wants without any repercussions, and obviously there hasn't been for any of his actions because Alicent is trying to sweep it under the rug. Aemon's, he has more of that Daemon in him, chip on his shoulder, not afraid to stir the pot, very capable as a fighter, almost beat Criston Cole. Well, no, he did beat Criston Cole. By the way, you're training in the yard, and I think any of those blows would have took his head off.
Yeah, what the hell?
But the way he kind of carries himself with after the fight, just noticing the nephews out of his peripheral vision of his one eye, I thought was pretty cool.
Right.
Just a very serious and type of instigator, and he does have some of that Daemon in him, which is why I think people kind of like him, even though he's very much set up as not a good person.
Yeah, I like when Aemon gets that final blow and everything's just moving faster, showing off his skills as a fighter. Now he's at this mature age. I think they said they're all between 17 and 21 now, so he's just as capable as any of the fighters in Westeros, it appears. So the vibe of that character now rocking the eye patch, and like you said, just like when he was a little kid, very serious, is concerned about his duties, but is also now willing to play the game a little bit. Obviously, he has the infamous toast near the end of the episode, but I thought the kids, the adult versions of the kids were solid. Even Jace and Luke, I really appreciated their relationship now, a little bit older, and like you said, Jace trying to learn High Valyrian. I guess he's not as precocious as his mother, because she was speaking that shit like it was her first language when she was 12. And he's over there struggling with killed and felled, and she's like, all right, calm it down. You're still strong. And even Luke telling his older brother, everyone's looking at us. To have all the eyes of court on you because of that open secret, it's a tough burden to live with, because you're just trying to be a kid. You're just trying to do right by your family. But everyone is going to question everything you do, everything you say, or has the ability to question your authority because of your true parentage. So it's tough burdens that they're living with.
I wonder if it would be easier if she just said, yeah, they're Strong's kids, but have her dad legitimize them.
Right. Yeah, at this point, everyone does know.
Yeah.
I even felt that with the scene that she had with Rhaenys. Just tell her that you helped Laenor escape.
That was a good scene, and I think they were both great in that. But the whole, I mean, obviously you can't, because I think that's even more fucked up. It's like, you made me think my son's been dead for 7 years.
Yeah, that's true. She might not forget that.
So either way you slice it, but I'm like,
But at least it puts a little bit on Laenor.
Yeah.
Like, hey, yeah, we faked his death, but he had no problem leaving.
He hated Driftmark.
He really did. And that's something, obviously because I was sick, we didn't get to do the spoiler discussion, but I wanted to bring up a point about Laenor that it is interesting that he just sort of gave up his life.
Well, I saw people contrast that to what Criston Cole wanted Rhaenyra to do, and he was willing where she wasn't, so...
Right.
I mean, different circumstances, of course, but at the end of the day, choosing a life where you can kind of live freely and not feel like you're stuck within the confines of your surroundings, I think that's something that is very appealing for him. So maybe Rhaenys would have understood from that perspective. But yeah, either way you slice it, it's kind of like, well, I still don't have a son. But at least you have the thought of like, well, he's happy and doing what he wants. But also the last 7 years of me grieving have been pointless.
Yeah, I felt like in this episode you definitely feel the absence of the years more so than the other time skips. There are some things that maybe if the story was told from a different starting point, these moments would hit harder. But I definitely felt the absence of the years, especially losing a character like Corlys just to start the episode. Oh, he's been out at war, and they did establish that the fighting on the Stepstones has begun again, that the Triarchy is resurgent. So, but I thought his brother was actually a pretty good stand-in for that sort of Valerian authority.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that first scene that he did have with Rhaenys, and I thought he had himself a great episode, Vaemon Valerion.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's a situation where he's obviously opposing our protagonist here, but like he's not wrong with anything he's saying. Like I said, like you don't want that for Rhaenyra and the implications, and obviously the result of him being named Lord of Driftmark delegitimizes her children and further confirms the rumors of her, and her standing is completely gone with Rhaenyra. So, but from his perspective, like his family seat is being given to bastards, not of Valerian blood. So, like, I think he has every right to be upset and call it into question because he's like, whereas Corlys is worried about the name, he's more concerned with blood, and they're not his blood.
Right, and I guess an easy fix is marrying Jace and Luke to Rhaena and Baela.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they are Valerians. They have the Valerian blood. And the blood carries over, the name carries over. They are Strongs, Rhaenyra's kids, but they're also Targaryens.
Right.
So even from his perspective, House Targaryen's basically just trying to take over House Valerian.
Yeah.
Because they are Targaryens. So it's like they're usurping that seat from them.
And I'm sure a lot of resentment, like throughout the years, of feeling less than the Targaryens, even though they both come from Old Valyria. And yeah, sure, I think Vaemon, part of it is he wants power as well. I don't think he's completely innocent in his ambition, but again, he's just not wrong.
Yeah, it's like we said in the previous episodes, they're leaving paths of power for people to take.
Right.
So if those kids were legitimate, he would have no claim. We've seen that before, though. When people don't have claims, they still make them. But at the end of the day, they are bastards, so there's some wiggle room there. Obviously, when you bring that in front of a Targaryen king, he obviously wasn't expecting Viserys to be sitting on the Iron Throne that day. He thought he was going to have an audience with Otto, and Otto was going to obviously rule in his favor.
Even when Vaemon meets with them earlier, he basically says, look, there might be a war coming, you probably want our fleet on your side. So, like, there's more to it than just protecting the integrity of the family seat. That's part of it, and...
yeah, no, they make good points about Luke is a child, and he's a seasoned veteran of the sea.
Yeah.
So it just would make... I mean, at the end of the day, he's still going to be a commanding general of their armies if Luke is still sitting on that seat. We're not going to fire you, Vaemon.
Yeah.
You know, you could still do some war stuff if you want. Still a valuable part of this family. Not anymore, obviously. But
Yeah.
he had a very good episode, though.
No, he did.
Very forceful, very commanding, similar to his brother. Kind of hang on every word that he's speaking. So he's got that vibes of one of these old hardened lords of Westeros.
And even with going back to Otto and Alicent, obviously Alicent sitting head of the small council, the
So
hand
fucking
speaking
gangster.
for the king, like it's just the high towers are running the show right now.
Right, they replace all the Targaryen sigils with the 7-pointed stars. They found religion, man.
Through God, all things are possible.
Yeah, the way she was like, oh, the 7 are guiding our decisions. Okay, Allison.
But yeah, they're very much running the show here because Viserys, it's not even like, we made our jokes like last week. I mean, Viserys last week is a spry young doing cartwheels compared to this Viserys.
No, I mean, it's just hard. It's become harder and harder to watch, especially because Paddy Considine has been so great as this character. And like I said, he's brought so much humanity, so much warmth, so much just real love to the character that he actually cares about the people around him, even when they're at dinner and he's talking about the most important faces in his life. So to see him in this state, he seems like the least deserving of this fate, to have everything just fall apart, not only in your life, but physically. So yeah, he's like literally a shell of himself. He's like a ghost at this point. So we see him that first scene with Rhaenyra and Daemon, and he's patched up. And even the way Damon acts in that scene, you could see the empathy coming off of him and the sympathy for his brother. There's been so much problem, so much tension, but at this point, what are you going to say? What are you going to do?
And I was happy to see, because I think Millie Alcock and Patty Considine shared some terrific scenes as Rhaenyra and Viserys in those earlier episodes. So to see Emma Darcy be able to go off of Patty in these moments, I thought were very well done. She even looked very Millie Alcock and Emma Darcy looked very similar in a couple of those shots, and I think they do in general. But when they're talking when Rhaenyra is talking to Viserys in that moment, I think one of the angles, I was like, holy crap, that's quite the striking resemblance there. But I think those scenes were able to match the impact of those earlier scenes as well, especially with these two characters in this state of their lives, especially when she goes to visit her father at night and has that last plea of basically the conflict in her, talking about how she doesn't even know if she really wants this anymore and she just needs her father's help, like a daughter coming to her father for help again and giving him the opportunity to really not do the right thing, because I think he's always done right by her, but just one last show of support for his daughter. And I think those scenes were delivered perfectly.
Yeah, it's almost like she reverted back into being younger Rhaenyra. She was a kid again, talking to her father, making her plea for help, saying that this is a burden that is becoming increasingly heavy over the years. Naming me heir has split the kingdoms, so I know you're in the worst state of your life right now, but I need one last push. I need one last stance from King Viserys, first of his name, the King of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men. But those moments, they were very touching. And like I said, she was very vulnerable in those scenes, talking about the responsibilities of being heir. It almost felt like she was ready to give it up. Telling her father, hey, name your first son the king. This is just ridiculous at this point. This is doing more harm than it's actually doing good. And you see that at times, characters think that they want power and then they receive it, or they start on the path of power and they realize how many obstacles are actually going to be in their way. And especially for a woman, you can't leave that out. It's much different for a woman than it would be a man.
Well, even in that state he's in, the glimmers of joy when he sees his grandchildren or when he sees his family together, through his performance, you're still able to get so much, even of a character in this state. And I saw somebody say that at his weakest, he was his most powerful. And I think he conveyed that perfectly. Even that moment when they're hearing the petitions and everything seems to be stacking up against Rhaenyra. You have Otto on the throne, Alicent right there, Vaemond basically bringing to light every suspicion that people have of her children. And it doesn't look like it's going well. I think both the Targaryens there, Rhaenys showing her support and basically aligning herself with Rhaenyra, but Viserys coming into that throne room, getting the titles, him making that triumphant stroll down to the Iron Throne was just beautiful with the score and the shots. Everything really came together perfectly. And that's one of those moments that his strength there is, elicited such a response for me. I got chills watching it, like I would be watching some epic battle. But it was a battle of him trying to get to the throne to stand up for his daughter. And I think everything surrounding that and the implications of that journey is just makes it as powerful as, like I said, some huge heroic moment on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, the music felt like the triumphant moment in a battle, that you're finally going to overcome your enemy. And it's a classic case of actions speak louder than words. Just him being there completely changes the dynamic of that court. So instead of it being the High Towers coming down with the final verdict, it's going to be King Viserys. And we know how he's going to rule. He's always had Rhaenyra's back. And in those very vulnerable moments when he's hopped up off the milk of the poppy, and you wonder if he still had his wits about him, but the Hightowers were exploiting his condition to say, oh, not only is he physically unwell, but he's mentally unwell too. So he's saying, oh, my only child. It's almost like he's bringing himself mentally back into the days of when he was married with Emma and it was only Rhaenyra, when he was happy. So I think it's, all that builds up into that moment of him coming into the throne room. And it's arguably the best scene of the season.
I will sit the throne today. Your Grace.
Once again, a Targaryen just taking a walk, right? You have to get up those stairs, get up those steps. The crown falls off, and it's Daemon who assists him. That was another great brotherly moment, right? The last great moment between them. That definitely brought chills to my spine, man. That was just, like you said, you put it perfectly, triumphant. So he sits on the Iron Throne, looking like a king once again. And he even made the mask look badass.
No, I mean, you go from feeling bad and having pity for him to really respecting him.
Yeah.
And I think...
Well, when he came in, I was like, yeah, you motherfuckers better bow down. That's the fucking king, okay?
They mentioned the Roiner, too, and they forgot that later on.
Yeah, the fucking Roiner, man.
That's
how you know.
Yeah.
And he's not even the king of the Roiner. All right, guys, before we get to the second half of this review, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for today's episode, Smile Brilliant. If you're like me, you're confused by all the variations of teeth whitening on the market. Items like LED lights, whitening strips, charcoal, and whitening toothpaste might sound good in theory, but they don't fully get the job done, like Smile Brilliant's custom-fitted whitening trays. LED lights will accelerate the process, but they won't make your teeth whiter, and could lead to teeth sensitivity. Whitening strips totally neglect gum lines, crevices, and molars. They work, but your remaining stains will be more prominent. Charcoal is abrasive, and wears down your tooth enamel, while whitening toothpaste only works on surface stains. But with one of Smile Brilliant's custom-fitted whitening trays, you can freshen your smile without worrying about damaging your teeth or leaving behind any noticeable stains. Historically, whitening trays were only provided by dentists at a price of $300 to $1,000. But that all changed when Smile Brilliant came up with their innovative Lab Direct process that is not only less expensive, but far more effective in achieving that picture-perfect smile we all crave. And right now, you could visit smilebrilliant.com and use promo code NERDSOUP to save 20% off all products, including their custom-fitted teeth whitening trays or custom-fitted night guards if you're someone like me who grinds their teeth in their sleep. They also have a great selection of professional oral care products such as electric toothbrushes, water flosser, dental probiotics, and much more. And remember, that's promo code NERDSOUP for 20% off all products, so don't wait, click that link, and take care of your teeth. It's so important. So important. And just going back to Viserys walking through the throne room, it's an emotionally satisfying scene on so many different levels. Obviously, you have the tension between Viserys and Daemon throughout the years. It's a beautiful way for them to reconcile. No words spoken between them, just actions. Helping out your brother, taking his arm, helping him take his seat, and placing the crown on his head. And also the moment that Viserys shares with Rhaenyra, that quick glance of, I got your back. It's amazing what a parent's love can inspire them to do when their child is in danger, and that's what he's doing here. He's there to protect his kid. So just like I said, on so many different levels, this is one of the most emotionally satisfying scenes in all of Game of Thrones, and a scene that was fitting for a king.
And him commanding the room, too. Like, obviously, he sounds a little faint, maybe a little bit weaker, but he does have his wits about him. And basically just calling it what it is in his eyes, a farce, and this isn't even a matter for discussion. You have Rhaenys come supporting Rhaenyra's proposal for marriage, and yeah, that moment of solidarity between the Targaryen family there was just really, really effective. And it sets Vaemond off on a rant where I don't know if it was a moment of like he's already too far deep and he's like, all right, if I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna make sure everybody knows why I'm going out, and I'm right
it could
here.
Be that.
Yeah,
and it was for just the show overall. Nobody wants to say it out loud, so when somebody finally does say it, he screams it.
Our children are bastards!
So it's just echoing throughout the chamber. And we've seen it throughout the season. There are so many different things that have been said or done to Viserys, and he doesn't take action. Like in the first episode when Otto says, oh, you could have the Lord's tongue for calling Rhaenys the queen who never was, and Viserys kind of lets it go. But in this moment, he takes out the knife himself, like he wanted to take out the tongue.
But he still only wants tongue. Daemon wants heads.
Yeah, he could keep his tongue. Once again, somebody made a joke that they were like, here's the script that Daemon gets for every episode. It's just blank paper. But he's just so good at reacting when he's performing. So it's those little, the way he gathers himself after he takes off Vaemond's head. And when they say, disarm him, no need.
Yeah.
Takes a nice little step back, goes to sheath his sword. But that was a moment that I think caught a lot of people by surprise.
No, it just happened so quickly.
Yeah. I love the goofy special effects there, that the Valyrian steel, nice quick slice, clearly CGI, but I love that shit, because in the moment you're like, oh, that's something you'd see in a fucking horror movie, like a B horror movie. So I really like that moment.
Yeah, and I think with Daemon, we talked about in the past, like him taking justice into his own hands a lot of the times when Viserys is more lenient. And I think he would have disciplined Daemon, but I think
he definitely wasn't walking out of there unscathed. I doubt he thought he was going to lose his life.
Yes.
But you know what? Calling the heir a whore in front of everybody like that, and calling into question the legitimacy of her heirs, that could be a death sentence. So.
Oh, I think for a lot of kings it would have been.
Yeah, I don't think Daemon's gonna, a lot of people, we talk about a lot of people always being Daemon apologists, so I don't think that's a moment where
no,
you have to defend him.
No, he's got like defenses for weeks now. Like between him just helping his brother. It doesn't take a lot for them. And I love Daemon too, but it's just like those two acts of like doing the right thing. Everyone's like, oh, it's all right that he killed his wife.
And earlier in the season, everyone was wondering what were Daemon's true ambitions. And we talked about it, that even though he does want power, like most men in this world, he still has a lot of love for his family. And you see it there. They were two brothers who grew up together with no other siblings. So they've always had a complicated relationship. But at the end of the day, that's his family. And that's the side he is going to take. And he's defending his wife in that moment. They've been married now for 6 years. She's obviously pregnant with their third child. They've got the 2 already. So he needs to not only defend King Viserys, but defend his wife's honor. So in this episode, he comes off as heroic. And I think that's why so many people love this character, because he's so unpredictable. You just never know what he's going to do. And the way he instigates that moment as well, telling Daemon, say it. Let's get this out of the way. So if it's such an open secret, then let's just lay our cards bare on the table.
I think he's definitely matured a bit since when we first were introduced to him.
Yeah,
but,
definitely. He doesn't talk as much.
Yeah.
It's more actions. It's more reacting. So he lets everybody else show their cards, and then he pulls out a sword and kills them.
It's not just any sword too, fucking Dark Sister.
Right.
That thing cuts smooth.
Yeah. He turned his head into butter.
And going back to Rhaenys too, I think this was probably one of her strongest episodes, even when she's in the... is it a crypt? No. When she's in the morgue.
Yeah, the morgue, right. Yeah, she's talking to the mortician.
The Silent Sisters are preparing his body. Just, you can see like everything that she's been through kind of... I don't think it fully overwhelmed her, but she definitely is in a place where it seems like she definitely needs a break. Because in her mind, both her children are dead. Her husband is presumably like almost going to die because, that's why they're all here to discuss succession, because they think Corlys has a very good chance of dying. And I think in that moment, she really captures basically just all of that coming to a head, because she really doesn't have, she has her granddaughters, I believe, and I think that gives her something to live for, but her whole family is gone. And maybe if she wasn't even as close to Daemon, but it's just another member of her family that's just gone.
And Rhaenys seems like a character who understands really how this world works, and the world has made her numb. So in that moment, she could, she holds Rhaenyra responsible for Laenor's death, so she could possibly take the Hightower side, or like she said, take a step back and let the Hightowers deliver that first blow. But she does side with family. So there's a maturity and a wisdom to that character that at the end of the day, she's going to not make it personal, not try and betray them or connive or look for avenues of power, just trying to find the best avenue to preserve what she has left. So yeah, I think a lot of people were wondering where this character was going to fall when it comes to the Dance of Dragons, but she let it be known in this episode.
Yeah, that was pretty funny in the beginning when Rhaenyra's like, oh no, she'll support us, and Daemon's like, yeah, she thinks we killed her son.
Right, yeah, no, she does. That could be an issue.
Fair point.
What about that scene when Alicent meets Rhaenyra and Daemon for the first time? Walks in the room, knowing that she runs the joint, and they express that as well. It must be very difficult ruling the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, no, it's one of those awkward moments where you have to play the part of do the pleasantries, but you see like Rhaenyra has the scar on her forearm.
Right, yeah.
Like the last time they seen each other, she came at her with a Valyrian steel blade. Yeah, it's such an awkward dynamic because they were such good friends, and that's why later on in the episode at the dinner scene, like when they kind of reconcile a little bit, like it is nice, but obviously it doesn't seem like it's going to last too long. But for that moment, especially for Viserys, his last memory or his last outlook on the situation is, oh, you did it, Viserys. You brought everybody together.
Yeah, look at this.
And they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Right, now I could finally die.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Civil War breaks out. No, that is really sad because for the last how many years he's been desperately trying to pull this group together. And like you said, for that to be the last moments he has with his family, it's heartbreaking that he's never going to know what truly happened, that he was, I don't want to say directly responsible, but he was partly responsible for the downfall of his family, for the demise of the Targaryen dynasty that he was obsessed with his entire life. That's all he talks about, is the greatness of previous Targaryen kings in Old Valyria and the future, that dragons will rule for another 100 years. So everything that he's been working towards, he thinks that he's finally got it. But, episode 9, episode 10, just based on the previews, the storm is coming. This was the calm before the storm.
Yeah, I think this is one of, especially the imagery during that scene. Even before that, a couple of shots of the throne, there was a great shot of Alicent up there with Rhaenyra under it.
And somebody pointed out that at the dinner scene, the right side of his face is decaying, and that's where the high towers are.
Yeah.
And the left side is more healthy, and that's where his family is.
Yeah, just him in front and center with both sides split. I thought that was just really well done. And I think a lot of...
That was a funny montage of all them being happy.
I think on rewatch...
It was a little silly.
Yeah. I think the season on rewatch, too, I think, even though we've pointed out a lot of things, and people have online as well, I think the visual storytelling has been very strong, and some of the symbolism showed in certain scenes and certain moments have been very impactful. But yeah, for a moment, everything seems to be going well, and there's a lot of tension there, especially between
fucking Aegon,
Jace and Aegon, and Aemond and Luke kind of positioned across the table from each other. Someone pointed out when he laughed when he brought out the roasted pig, and that's when Aemond got upset.
Okay, that's funny.
But
I got a kick out of when Helena toasted Jace, and Jace and Rhaena, talking about how, when, he'll probably pay attention to you when he's drunk. And Daemon starts cracking up. He's like, that's hilarious. I love this girl.
I mean,
it's the first time she spoke in non-riddles, even though she has a nice little riddle there that there's some juicy foreshadowing that she keeps giving us that we can't talk about. But people on Twitter, if you want to know it, just go on Twitter, because all the spoilers, for some reason, everyone's just posting spoilers for this story all over Twitter.
No, they love it.
Yeah. But I thought that was really funny. We finally see, some personality coming out of that character. And the tension between Helena and Aegon, that you could pick up that it's an unhappy arrangement between the two of them, that they have children, and Aegon clearly doesn't give a fuck about them or about her.
Yeah. But Viserys' speech about coming together, one last ditch effort before he dies.
There was so much desperation in his voice.
But it was so great. It's delivered so well. It did work. I mean, obviously not for everybody, but I think the speech Rhaenyra gives and the speech Alicent gives, I think they're both practical people.
Yeah, but I also think that Viserys taking off his mask, showing his family his true face, it brings out the best of them in this moment because he's so vulnerable. He's a man with his final breaths. He's just desperately trying to get them to show the respect and love that he has for all of them, so they empathize with him, and they're able to put aside their differences and show the appreciation they have for one another, the important things in life. So when a character who is as beloved and commands that sort of respect is in these vulnerable moments, it can bring out the raw emotion from the characters surrounding them. And even going back to the scene that Rhaenyra and Viserys share in private when she's asking him about the prophecy, her resolve is withering, so she's questioning him on whether he believes it's actually true. She wants something to latch onto so that she can stay the course, but seeing him in this vulnerable position, it brings out an outburst of emotion from Rhaenyra. It may be one of the final moments that she shares with her father, so it's tough. Obviously, he's been very loving to her entire life, so it's almost like their private goodbye. And I think Viserys' state throughout this episode, you see it, him being in this vulnerable state brings out this raw, pure emotion from several characters, and some of it is heartbreaking, and at other times it can be heartwarming. But see, this is why I don't love the end. I really don't like the idea of Aegon. Oh, our Aegon? The prince who was promised. He's a prince? Needs to unite the realm. Got it. Yeah, you know what? That was a great moment just 15 minutes ago, but I'm going to betray Rhaenyra. I wish that it was more so. I guess you could paint it as Alicent's just grasping for anything at this point.
Yeah, I think that's what really it means. Like, Alicent is using that as a way to secure her position.
But she seems super genuine just 20 minutes earlier. Rhaenyra saying, "Oh, I'll come back on Dragonback. That would be great. We're going to do this together." And then she misinterprets his last final words and then he dies.
Yeah, I think that's her trying to justify it in her own head.
I almost wish that I didn't even need that, because I thought the way that they were building it up, that if Alicent was to betray her, it would be even more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because they've had this nice moment where they're finally coming together. Everything's cordial, everything's loving and warm, and they're finally on the same page. And even then, she can't commit. She's still in the back of her mind, all of the poison that Otto has been whispering in her ear, all of the different characters in the realm who are vying for power. She just makes a mistake. And she goes, it needs to be Aegon. I'm still going to push my son because I fear for their life, or because I want power, or a combination of all of these different things. But I think her misinterpreting the prophecy, I don't want to call it lazy, but it was a little like, okay, yeah, whatever. Episode 9 looks good, so who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's her, like you said, her...
One last fuck up for Viserys.
Yeah, I mean... just blowing it all at the end.
I know, right?
It's like finishing the Lego tower and just...
Whoa.
Just falling, collapsing right before you.
Some little kid knocks your sandcastle down.
Yeah.
After all the work you did. And you're the little kid.
What do you think Edward's doing? The Legos have fucking cobwebs on them. Like, you think he's depressed because he can't build anymore?
Well, knowing Edward, he probably got his head chopped off. Normally happens to Edwards. He was investigating Rhaenyra's children.
Back to the dinner. I mean, Jace taking dancing with Helena, I thought was, just kids being kids in that moment. But obviously, Aegon and Aemon are just miserable. Like, they're just not.
Well, Jace and Helena in a different timeline.
Yeah,
they were supposed to be together, right? They could have been together as husband and wife. And she looked way more happier with Jace than she ever seems with Aegon.
Even Baela and Rhaena, like, they were so psyched when they found out they were going to marry them. So, like, just having them all come together on that side for a moment. But Aemon just can't let it go. He just has to stir the pot there. And the looks he gives, even in the throne room, even Aegon, too, looking at Daemon, it's like, they look at him like, he's just like me.
Oh, Aemon was really impressed by what Daemon did. He was into that.
Yeah.
And they do share that sort of standoff where Daemon comes and defends his stepsons. And you could see that, Aemon, in a way, he looks up to Daemon. And Daemon's got that reputation as the bad boy. So we see it all the time of characters worshiping questionable people and maybe taking it too far. And I think he does that in this moment. Everything is going well and he's the one to fuck it up. But that, it speaks to... the games that Alicent has been playing. When you've been feeding your kids these ideas for how many years that these, Jace and Luke are going to put you to the knife once they come into power because you threaten them, it's hard for them to be mature in those moments. They still are kids. So he does the immature thing, and Aegon jumps in right away too. He just takes Luke's head and bashes it on the fucking table.
Yeah. Well, boys will be boys.
Yeah, boys will be boys, right. So when Alicent's, grabs him and is like, what the hell are you doing? It's like, I'm doing what you told me to do, basically, right? This is what I've been raised to do, is to oppose Rhaenyra's children. This is the shit you've been telling us. What the hell?
That speech, 3 strong boys.
Bars.
Yeah. And it's in such the setting after everyone's like seemingly happy and just set it off like that. Because I think for the most part, Jace was handling it very well. Not letting it almost got to him, but not letting his comments really set him off too much, showing some composure there. But at the end of the day, you keep getting pushed like that, and you see how sensitive they are to people's perceptions and what their whole life probably being made fun of, or people talking under their breath about them being strong. It's just something that kind of sets them off in that moment.
Yeah, if Rhaenyra wasn't the heir, and if they weren't poised to also be heirs, I doubt anybody would fucking care. It's one of those things. It's just because of the position that they're in. If they were bastards, but Aegon was going to be the heir. It's, who cares? Maybe Vaemon's a little upset about it still, but it's because that information is so sensitive. And when people bring that up, they're not bringing it up just to joke. They're bringing it up because they want to challenge you. They want to take what's yours.
And people are mean to bastards, even unintentionally. Like in the books when they're talking about how Robb and Jon used to play, and Jon was like, I'm Lord of Winterfell. And I was like, you can't be Lord of Winterfell. You're a bastard. It's like, they're so mean to them, even unintentionally.
Yeah, it's part of the culture. It's just a little backwards.
I like how they say natural born son when they spin zone it that way.
Right.
Because it's just an act of nature.
They are Targaryens at the end of the day. Just as much Targaryen as Aegon and Aemon. But it just comes down to that whole name. And like I said, it's just, it's something that you could latch onto because of Westerosi culture and customs that gives you the opportunity to challenge someone's legitimacy. And that's just, it leaves them in a vulnerable position. We love Rhaenyra as a character, and I think a lot of people are rooting for her, but she kind of screwed her kids over.
Yeah.
So, and the way that she defends them, obviously she's going to defend them as a mother, but it's a little silly to see her keeping up with this lie when everyone knows that it's not true. And her position is very vulnerable, not only because of that, but like I said, because she is a woman, and because Viserys has other children that obviously he doesn't care about, because he's over here calling Rhaenyra his only child. Which is pretty funny.
And mistaken Alicent for Rhaenyra at the end. Song of Ice and Fire, Prince That Was Promised, Aegon. A lot of connections to the main show. That moment was just so sad because seeing what all he went through this episode and throughout the season, and it always gets me when you slowly see the life leaving someone's body, even if it is acting. It's just a moment where I don't know, it's just difficult to watch.
Yeah, for the episode to end on that moment, and some people pointed out that he sort of reaches out. Maybe he's reaching out for Emma. She's greeting him in the afterlife. He's finally finding peace and leaving everything else a mess. So I guess for him, it's okay, right? He's done. He's checked out. But
He deserves the rest. It doesn't look like the years have been kind to him.
No, and I think, just it sucks that we're no longer going to see Paddy Considine as this character, because he was my favorite character of the season, and I think it's been the strongest performance because of all the nuance that he brought to the character of Viserys. I've said it over and over again, he just grounds not only the character in this world, but the entire show, everything around him. He's the nucleus.
You can argue when you're talking about the greater world, best portrayals. I think he's up there.
Yeah. I think so. It's one of my favorite portrayals of not only House of the Dragon, but of Game of Thrones. Yeah. He's just a very complicated man who leaves a complicated legacy, and they couldn't have found a better actor to portray him.
No, yeah, his presence.
And I felt bad when he called himself ugly. Not ugly in that moment, but he's like, I don't know if I was ever handsome. Come on, you were handsome.
You're good looking.
Yeah, good looking dude.
Dude, that eye. Ooh.
You know what? Yeah, he looks terrible, but the special effects there were really great.
Very well done. Yeah. Even the faintness, obviously I don't think he lost all that weight, but they were able to really, with the lighting and maybe some makeup, make it look very convincing.
Yeah, dude, it was agonizing to watch at times. The wheezing, the coughing, the groans. He's in so much pain. And that's why that moment of him once again walking into the throne room feels so triumphant, because you've spent so much time with this character and you've seen this descent. So for him to have that one last hurrah, it's just so fulfilling.
Yeah, because he's not a king like he's talked about earlier in the season that ever had any great victories or any great battles, but that might have been his greatest battle and his greatest triumph, was making that walk. And in tradition with these reviews, we are going to end on an insignificant scene that we forgot to mention, but we have to bring it up now.
Okay.
Mysaria. Not insignificant, but just it's not the scene.
Right.
The biggest moment of the episode. Well, we did pass by that one.
That was a nice little bait and switch when she's meeting with somebody in a hood.
Yeah.
I thought, it's going to be Daemon and Mysaria catching up. It's been a long time. How are the kids? How's your health? And then it's just Alicent's maid.
Yeah.
So Mysaria's got spies everywhere, man. So that's interesting. That's just kind of establishing that Mysaria's there and she's watching.
Yeah, no, she knows probably who Aegon is, what he does, and probably a lot more dirt within that family, or in just in court in general. So yeah, it's a small scene, but I think it establishes her as someone who is basically playing the Varys game, value and secrets and knowledge is what can bring power to people who aren't necessarily born with it.
Yeah, but overall, The Lord of the Tide's another solid episode, and now with episode 9 coming up, the penultimate, we can only imagine what's going to happen. The preview looked so intense, a lot of moving parts, people gathering their banners. We love it when that shit happens in this world, so I'm so excited to watch episode 9, and then later in the week talk about episode 8 on a spoiler discussion. Hopefully I don't get sick again. And we'll bring on the Ted Man for that one. He's going to be he's a big Viserys guy too, so he's going to be broken out by this. But I know he definitely loved that moment of Viserys walking in the throne.
Yeah.
Dun, da, 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 da. They literally gave him his own theme song.
Oh, he deserves it.
Yeah, he does.
And yeah, like you said, the preview next week looks fantastic. I cannot wait.
Alright guys, that does it for this video. Thank you for joining us for this review. For Aaron the Nerd Soup Monkey, I am Beau Oliver. Before we sign off, I want to quickly spotlight our weekly podcast, the Nerd Soup Podcast, published every Wednesday at noon. Every week, you could join myself, Aaron, Teddy, and the rest of the Nerd Soup crew as we discuss the hottest stories in movies and TV, equipped with some off-the-cuff commentary on the world of pop culture, while also providing extended reviews for the movies and shows we love. You can subscribe to our podcast channel on YouTube at the Nerd Soup Podcast, which can also be found on our Nerd Soup homepage, and you can listen to episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and all of the podcasting platforms we publish to. Thank you again for joining us on this review, and we will be back next week to review episode 9.
Wow, that was probably our best review yet. Hey guys, Aaron the Nerd Soup Monkey here with a brief shameless plug before we end the video. Do you ever feel like you don't have an adequate amount of nerd soup in your life? Like you're going to bed hungry and yearning for the nonsensical yet entertaining nutrients our podcasts provide? Well, we've come up with the perfect solution. The Nerd Soup Fan Question Podcasts, exclusively available to our Patreon supporters. You can sign up now by visiting patreon.com/nerdsoup, and for the price of only $1 per month, you'll receive exclusive access to our weekly podcast where we answer your questions that don't make it to the main show. And while you're there, you can check out the other rewards we offer to our patrons, like stickers, mugs, t-shirts, behind-the-scenes footage, and appearing in the credits at the end of our videos. And that's exactly what we're gonna do right now. Roll the names of the nerds who make Nerd Soup possible. The reason why the crypto crash didn't send our lives spiraling down a black hole of no return. Alright, I'll stop talking so you can listen to this jazzy-ass music while checking if Beau spelt your name wrong in the credits.